Hello, everyone, from Louisville, Kentucky. I'm Robert Lee, and I'm happy to introduce myself to you today and to be a part of the Paraclete family. I was raised in the Appalachian area of North Alabama, and despite my best efforts, I still haven't gotten rid of this twangy Southern accent. My dad was a high school band director, and I grew up going to his band rehearsals with him, and I would come home, climb up on the piano that we inherited from my grandmother, and try to plunk out the tunes I'd heard the band play at rehearsal. It was pretty primitive, but this is how I began to play by ear, and it still serves me well today. It's amazing to me that my father, who grew up as a sharecropper during the Great Depression, grew into a man who treasured classical music. His album collection, I would say, included everything from Sousa marches to Brahms and Beethoven and Wagner. So most days we heard lots of music playing around the house, and I think that's where I got my love for it. Because my father was also a church musician, we spent lots of time there, and because it was a small town, there was very little to do, especially in the summers, and so the church youth choir and the youth program became the center of our activity. Especially in those days, the late 60s, was a time of the Christian youth musicals, if you remember that. And the highlight of the summer was learning the musical, performing that, going on a choir tour. And so I spent much time doing that. In my 16th year, our church organist decided she was going to retire. And so one day she said to me, "Robert, you're going to take my place." I said, I don't know much about playing the organ." She said, "That's okay, I'll get you started." And at first I was pretty intimidated, but then I grew to love it, and 50 years later I still love playing for the worship service. As I look back on a musical career, I can truly say I think that my best experiences, most profound experiences, have been making music with teenagers. I had the pleasure of directing choirs in a couple of high schools over the years, and I found that young people, more so than adults, are willing often to open themselves up and be vulnerable and sing with great passion and authenticity and intensity. And I think there were many days when our school rehearsals were more like worship services, to be frank. We talked a lot about how a secular space can become a sacred space and how it would be a safe space to express yourself. And when the kids would do that, it was very, very powerful. And they would say, "Let's make the music happen." And they did. I think most students, even though we don't recognize it, can discern the difference between shallow, cheap commercial music and really profound, wonderful classic music. Not necessarily classical, but classic. I remember handing out copies of the Cheshnikov Salvation is Created to my high school choir one year. I thought they would groan and protest. Surprisingly, they learned to love it, and not only did they love it, they asked for more. The same was true with the Palestrina Sicut Cervus, Bird, Ave Verum Corpus, Rheinberger, Abendlied, and so forth. They always wanted to sing the good stuff, and it was very endearing to see that happen. Having worked in a variety of church denominations over the years, I've found that everyone has something special to offer. But it was a 3-week visit to England 40 years ago that inspired my love for Anglican music and liturgy. Attending choral evensong for the first time, I knew that somehow I'd come home, as I express it. We went to Canterbury, Wales, Lincoln, Durham, Ely, King's College, Westminster Abbey, St. Paul's, anywhere we could find an evening worship service, choral evensong. And I found that the power of that music and the liturgy transcended anything I'd ever experienced before. Especially interspersed with moments of contemplative silence, those ancient cathedrals took on a mystical intensity I really still can't describe today. I came to savor the simplicity and intensity of Gregorian chant, and that led me to take a couple of retreats to some isolated monasteries in the mountains, and that was a life changer spiritually, to be sure. It's been a profound joy over the years to participate in the music programs of 3 wonderful parishes: St. James Episcopal Church in Jackson, Mississippi, St. Mary's Catholic Church in Greenville, South Carolina. And by the way, you should check out the videos of their Sunday morning masses. The worship is really magnificent. And currently, for the last 15 years or so, I've been the associate organist at St. Francis in the Fields Episcopal Church here in Harrods Creek, Kentucky. The wonderful evensong choir there, led by Dr. Jim Reitmeyer, does a regular program of excellent music and a monthly choral evensong, which is magnificent in itself. I think it's the best thing we do. This little short piece of mine, called Evening Prayer, incorporates one of my favorite texts. Guide us waking, O Lord, and guard us sleeping, that awake we may watch with Christ, and asleep we may dwell in peace. Words of great comfort, especially in times like this. I think that music came to me as I remember one winter afternoon in the year 2000. And here at St. Francis, the Evensong Choir has used this piece 2 or 3 times as sort of a choral benediction to the evening liturgy. And after they process out, they sing it from the back of the church, and we found it to be right effective, actually. And it's very rewarding to hear them sing it. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to be a part of our common musical journey. I hope this finds you well, and I hope you'll be safe and content.